Hey guys, so after playing Warblue build, I kind of had to sort of rehab myself from playing such an amazing build. So I did CI sweep as a challenge, and then I did Thunder Webcast on melee kill, Visual Cascade, but I got bored of that build because it was kind of boring and just quitted maps. And then I started Reckoning slash Riposte build, which is sort of like a walking simulator build, and I did that in the past. However, this build ended up being more of a standing simulator than a walking simulator. And in the end, obviously, I would not recommend this build. However, there are some interesting aspects of this build, and in the end, it had this sort of tank feel, but you know how tanks are usually low damage. So this is sort of like that. It works also much better in high density maps with a lot of aggressive monsters and fast monsters. But it still cannot do like super dangerous map modes like with double extra damage mods. It would be extremely scary. Also in the end, I end up having a bit less DPS than I wanted. In the end, everything combined is like 3.2 million DPS, but that's kind of conditional, and also monsters don't really constantly keep attacking you to proc the Reckoning and Vengeance, Reckoning and Riposte, which have their own cooldown. In the end, it's not really a very good build, I would say, but it can be interesting concept. So this is with Facebreakers, essentially just stacking a bunch of flat physical damage where I can. And despite having 7 auras, I promise this is not an aura stacker. Usually when I play Duelist, I always end up in the same situation where I have like 6-7 auras. And it's very annoying when you die and you need to reactivate them. However, this build doesn't really die very much. It's pretty tanky. It can get to 7000 HP. Has 85 attack block and 74 currently spell block without any flasks. However, I don't have percentage life on block, because I am using the Surrender Shield, which has 250 flat life when you block. Now, Reckoning and Riposte procs on block. But Riposte, there was something weird with Riposte until I put on Surrender Shield. I was using Riposte and Reckoning skills, and it seemed like they did not want to proc at the same time. I noticed that the Tempest Shield procs its block, because you can tell that the block is happening when Tempest Shield procs the arc, but only like Riposte or Reckoning would proc, or sometimes none of them would proc. So something was weird. But as soon as I put on the Surrender Shield and remove the skill gem Reckoning, because the Surrender Shield has its own Reckoning skill inside it, then it seemed to be working fine. Riposte and Reckoning was triggering at the same time. Now, Riposte does not need a shield, and it does not need a weapon. I made a YouTube shorts explaining about Riposte a bit, but Riposte is kind of weird and also unique and interesting, because Riposte is a strike skill. So you can actually use +1 to like strike, I keep forgetting the wording, basically Tribal Fury or Gloves with extra strike target would cause Riposte to strike extra targets from much further than normally. And if you use Melee Splash, it also strikes all the enemies around like Melee Splash would, except it shows the animation for each weapon separately. So it's not a typical Melee Splash animation, but it's an animation for each, like per enemy essentially. And it looks very cool when you're striking a lot of enemies at the same time, especially with unarmed. Also, you can use Behead on Riposte. So I'm actually running 6-link Riposte right now. I picked Anomalous Riposte because a bit less CDR, or a bit more cooldown recovery rate. It is linked with Behead because it gives melee strike range. At 20 quality it's +5 now. Also testing Culling Strike, Divergent, recovers 2% life when supported skill culls an enemy. I'm not sure if it's worth it or not, but it is what it is. Then melee damage, Awakened Melee Splash for a bit more AoE, and Brutality. And Reckoning is linked with Divergent Pulverize. Divergent gives 20% more melee area damage, and less attack speed does not matter because it's a trigger skill, so you do not perform it yourself. And then Awakened Melee Physical Damage and Brutality. I'm also using Ryslatha's Coil. Like, should I be explaining all the items? Like, the core concept is Facebreakers stack flat physical damage, boost your flat physical damage and other means, like more from Ryslatha's Coil. Even strength gives you increased melee damage. I'm also using Olroth's charge boots and ward flask. Basically, the ward flask is automated. When it reaches full, it gets used, and when it gets used, it refreshes your ward. So you don't need to wait for your ward to reset it, because it's like 9 seconds, 9.3 seconds ward restoration time. So you basically can have pretty much permanent ward as long as there are enough enemies attacking you. Another thing, this is Gladiator, and you can do it as non-Gladiator, just taking the Gladiator's node to get double damage for counter skills. You could take this node with the 2 forbidden jewels as a Slayer or as a champion, but I mean, I don't really see much reason to do that, because as a Gladiator you do get more like defensive stuff, and the violent retaliation I think is amazing. Hits ignore enemy monster physical damage reduction if you have blocked in the past 20 seconds. Since you are always blocking, you're always gonna ignore enemy physical damage reduction, including like map modes that give them more physical damage reduction or endurance charges. So this mod is just amazing. And also attack damage is lucky if you have blocked in the past 20 seconds is also amazing, because the damage rolls are pretty high because of Ryslatha's Coil. Let's see. The reckoning is doing between 36,000 and 154,000. So the minimum and maximum are very far apart. So if you got lucky damage, it means it rolls damage numbers twice and picks the higher number, and you're gonna do higher damage more frequently essentially. So lucky damage is amazing as well. But then again, if you're not going Gladiator and picking up the Pain Forge with the forbidden jewels, I could say the same. Why not go Gladiator and pick the forbidden jewels and pick the other nodes from the Slayer that you want. Other than that, this is also glancing blows, so I do take damage when I block still. And then I crafted the 1 jewel just to get the damage. Got pretty lucky, got quite a lot of flat life and strength, which is also some damage. And then I got Megalomaniac because I wanted more spell block. You can get spell block on like small cluster jewels, but to save more points basically. This is level 89 by the way. To save more points, I just got Megalomaniac. This one is amazing. This was a steal. This has 2 nodes with spell block and then another one with maximum life. This is just amazing. And then the normal jewels, I actually had to get quite a bit of resistances. Now the body armor that I have right now, you normally don't really want Aspect of the Spider and Skitterbots because it slows down enemies. Aspect of the Spider only slows down movement speed, but it still sucks, and Skitterbots slow down action speed, which includes attack and gas speed, which is also bad. But this body armor, I just had it 6 linked. I also had it with the Pride effect and the flash charge gained, and the Aspect of the Spider, well, is also damage wise good. So I just used that, but ideally you would not want the body armor with Aspect of the Spider. I had a different one. I had this one with like triple resistances, triple life. So this one was amazing, but it wasn't 6 linked, and it just doesn't have enough damage, I guess. And like previously I was using Determination, but I wanted more damage, so I dropped Determination, which gave me more room for other auras. And what other auras do you use? So right now I have Flesh and Stone linked with Maim. In the Blood Stance it gives strong Maim to enemies. And then Pride. Pride actually reserves no mana because of Owl's Uprising, which was like 3 exiles only. Then Tempest Shield to get spell block and immunity to shock. War Banner, Aspect of the Spider 19%, and then Summon Skitterbots 26% reservation, and then finally Blood and Sand. Blood and Sand I believe is the Owl quality, yeah, Divergent, because more area damage in the Blood Sands and more AoE in the Sand Stance. What would you use besides Skitterbots and Aspect of the Spider? I don't know if anything else would make sense. Like Herald of Ash would be nice, but then you cannot use Brutality. Herald of Ash would definitely help the build feel smoother. And it may actually do enough overkill damage to be meaningful. Otherwise you could probably go for the Exploded Body Armor, but it's not a guaranteed. And Devastator on Cluster Jewel is also not guaranteed, and it cannot chain explode, because Devastator requires an attack to kill the enemy, and if the explosion kills the enemy, then it will not proc another explosion. So Devastator can also be an option, but I don't think that it's worth going for the Devastator. Another thing is you could try using Blasphemy with the Punishment, because Punishment works kind of like imagine like a physical version of Herald of Ash. like the overkill damage gets, it does damage to our enemies. However, you do need a lot of increased general AoE, because it just has such a small AoE that I barely noticed any difference. I do have AoE, but only for attacks, and the punishment, I guess explosions are not attacks, so it doesn't scale with the AoE that I have. So you would need to kind of plan this in a bit different way and get more general AoE, like from the Templar area, maybe cluster nodes, I don't know, somewhere else. I'm gonna leave path for building import code in the description for this if you want to analyze it. There are some ways to improve this build, but like, do you really want to play this standing build? I only tried Conquerors, like I believe couple Guardians, couple Conquerors, mostly just Conquerors. I didn't really see a reason to do any higher boss testing, because this isn't really meant for that, and if bosses don't really attack you fast enough, then the damage is just completely terrible. But it does feel pretty tanky. Even for tier 16 maps, you can just jump into big enemy packs, hit the Pandemonium Sentinel, hit the Stalking Sentinel, and just empower everything and just survive, pretty much. Same goes for the Harvest. There are some dangerous monsters, obviously, that can just absolutely destroy this. So it's not like super tanky tank build, and it's not a high damage build, so it's like a mini tank, essentially. A mini tank with a small gun, like a cute small gun. Or maybe a pacifist build. Yeah, you can call this a pacifist build. You just walk in and see enemies sort of kind of reflect the damage back to themselves. One last thing that I want to mention is the gratuitous violence from the Gladiator doesn't really work with this very well. The issue is, if enemies get one-shotted by your hits, basically if you have enough damage and they just get one-shotted, then the bleed is applied after the hit. And if after the hit, the enemies are already dead. So they don't cause explosions, because the enemies need to be bleeding when they get hit, essentially. So it doesn't work very well. I tried it and it just never worked, essentially, unless you don't have enough damage. You could do this as a bleed build, but if you do this as a bleed build, I would highly recommend you to go with Vengeance instead. It's also a counter skill, although double damage doesn't work with bleed, so there's that as well. So that's about it. I don't know the next build. I'm kind of thinking, I'm not sure if I already had enough rehab from my Warlord build. By the way, I just walked over a whole lot of Grandmasters like there were no enemies around at all, pretty much without stopping. That build is just absolutely bonkers. I could not imagine that it could just walk over a whole lot of Grandmasters with no difficulties at all. And it walks over every... you know what, I don't want to hype myself for the Warlord build again. Anyway, I don't know what build I'm gonna be doing next, but I'm thinking maybe General Scribe, because it's kind of a meta. I know it's strong, but maybe I can experiment with other skills, so we'll see about that. If you got some interesting build ideas, leave them in the comments below. And for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.